I first read section 290 of The Gay Science, Die Fröhliche Wissenschaft, when I was about 15. Begins, one thing is needful. That's the title of the following section. One thing alone is needed. Giving style to one's character. We've talked about character. We've talked about what's necessary to be human. You may recall that Plato wants us to get our life in order, but the nice logical order: reason, passion, appetite. Aristotle wants us to find the middle road between the extremes. Aquinas looks to see what is it that God has made us? What is our essential quality of being human? What separates us from other non-human things? Nietzsche doesn't care about any of that. All Nietzsche cares about is style. How has this happened? Well, one of the things that has happened is the great empiricist rationalist debate between the continental thinkers who say everything is about reason and the British thinkers who say everything is about experience. As a result of emphasizing internality, philosophy became more idealism. In fact, it almost became exclusively idealism in many parts of the world. All that there is mental stuff. Same thing, although on the other side, the rationalist emphasizing experience makes everything subjective. And again, lots of people, that's exactly what they see philosophy as, telling us that it's our point of view, our essential subjectiveness in the world. We as subjects of the world make the world. And Nietzsche noticed, well, if this is true, then looking for essence is a waste of time. Looking for what we should do is a waste of time. Instead, let's look to what we can do. Let's look to what will make our world more beautiful, since beautiful, the experience of beautiful, is far more likely than the experience of truth. The reality means nothing. Appearance is everything, because appearance is all we can be sure of. So let's concentrate on what we actually do encounter. And what we do encounter is style, presence, presentation. When Nietzsche suggests that what is important about being human is to make an artistic presentation of ourselves, he acknowledges that we don't begin with a completely formless shape, a completely blank slate, at least not in terms of our bodies, in terms of our presentation to the world. We have our limitations, and trying to transcend those limitations is ridiculous, says Nietzsche. Instead, bring them together. You have a terrible lisp, don't talk so much. Instead, be silent, mysterious. Let people think you're thinking great thoughts, whether you are or you aren't. Take that piece of hidden original nature and hide it in the background. Instead, emphasize the things that you've been able to change. Emphasize the parts that work well and hide the parts that don't. Is this being inauthentic? No. Nietzsche would say, this is being realistic. This is looking at what's possible in the world and making the best of it, rather than conceding to the dreadful, sinful vision of the world that you get from the religious point of view. Let us be works of art. Let us be things of beauty. Let us make the world smile. He says when we don't, that's what makes things bad and gloomy. The world can be art, so make it art. The world has no certain shape, so let's give it a shape we like. In part, Nietzsche's reaction is a reaction to nihilism. I mean, basically, what shall we say? There is a negative reaction, which was the easiest reaction, which was for a long time the most popular reaction, to the discovery that it's all in your head. It's all in the presentation. It's all in your senses. It's in your thoughts, but it's not necessarily out there. Out there does not dictate what goes on in here. I am inclined to be a pragmatist on this and say out there matters as much as in here. But even that is stepping away from the old medieval thought that everything is out there and it forces itself on us in here. Instead, Nietzsche says, if it's all going on in here, let's make art, as opposed to the nihilist. The nihilist says, well, if there's nothing out there, then it's just all hopeless. It's just all a waste of time. There is nothing, nihil, nothingness, nothingism. Well, if there is nothing that's real, nothing that's concrete, nothing that's absolute, then Nietzsche says, let us make art. Let us create a world of our own. If there is no fixed reality, then let's play with it. Let's enjoy it. Let's have what we can have. Sure, there are going to be limitations, but they're the same limitations that Leibniz saw for his God. You can't do what's not logically consistent. You can't do what's physically impossible or metaphysically impossible. But that leaves a lot of playroom. What then is required is an aesthetic. What is then required is a vision of how things can be. Set up the values that best reflect your needs in life. Give style. All this proceeds forward, too, from Nietzsche's dictum that God is dead. Many people have debated what the phrase means. God is dead. What I have read it as for most of the last 50 years, since again I first encountered it, is that certainty is dead. Not only is it dead in a psychological sense, it's dead in a metaphysical sense. With certainty has died universals. Or perhaps I've got that wrong way around. With the death of universals, we have the death of certainty. But either way, whichever cart actually comes before that horse, what we mean here is that if everything is experiential and the experiences can be doubted, then nothing is certain. Everything is merely the strongest inference we can draw. Draw whatever inference you can. Make what of it you can. This is the teaching from Nietzsche. Not that we need to destroy religion or destroy Christianity. He believes these things to be dead already. What's more important to him, then, is that we have a vision, a way to live. In that sense, Nietzsche is also a pragmatist. He wants to know what works rather than what's true. He wants to know how we can make a world for ourselves rather than discover some other world which is not our own anyway. Let us have style. Let us have aesthetics. Let us have a vision of the world that is our own. Those who can't manage it, well, peace on them. but get them out of our way. Ooh, that's arrogant. Well, he means it. Those who can should. Those who cannot. He doesn't call it a shame or a sin or something wrong with them. He just says, he calls them literally the virtuous stupid. Give them something to do with their hands. Keep their little minds busy. But leave the important stuff to the great minds, the geniuses, the artists. Nothing is gained by adding more information from people whose information source just echoes one another. Those who can create something, make something, envision a world that has a particular style to it and can make that world, that is the person that Nietzsche wants to speak to. That is what he means when he talks about the Übermensch, the overman. Whoa, now that's a lot to think about. And I hope you'll talk about it. One thing I'd like to take this opportunity to say, when I read this passage as a 15-year-old, I was encountering philosophy really for the first time. And I was inclined to approach it as though it were authority, as though I were approaching the Bible. Philosophy is never the Bible. Philosophy is never the work of a mind that knows everything. Philosophy is always the work of questioners. Questions have to be asked. We may never find a final answer. When we do, it usually passes out of philosophy and becomes something else. But even if we never find the answer, as long as the question is worth the asking, then we're doing our job. So whenever you read any philosopher, don't take it as someone handing down the accepted truth of reality. Instead, as I learned to do, say, why do they say this? Where did this come from? Why would anyone think such a thing? So when I say to you, it's a lot to think about, it's because it's not a final thing. And you're not trying to figure out what's the right reading. Instead, you're trying to figure out why they would say such a thing. Where does this come from? And the past of philosophy. This is why I spend so much time in the history of philosophy, trying to understand how we got to where we are, how the conversation came to be where it's at, and then engage in that conversation. It's why we're talking philosophy so much, because it is the conversation that will reveal more answers and more opportunities to better, not finally, understand the world, but better understand the world. To get a little further down to a world where we have more humanity, more understanding, not necessarily more truth. So keep on talking philosophy, okay?